Hello everyone, welcome back. This is Building Big with City Skylines, episode 61. I'm Enigmius, and today we're going to talk a little bit about some of the progress that we've made in our newest experimental city, the city without dirty industry, as we wait for the night cycle to come around. And then we're going to talk about what we really want to talk about, and that's solar power at night. Kind of guess where we're going, even if you haven't experienced it for yourself. Now, since the last episode, we've just basically been trying to follow the demand of the citizens as they expand and kind of grow back into the city that we dissolved by dezoning it. You can still see all the service buildings we've got left over that we have to kind of move and get back into service at some point in the future. Presently, they're all disabled and complaining of high crime because they're just sitting out there abandoned. Not too worried about that. You might recall previously we had a low-density commercial area zoned in here because that's what people wanted in order to get things kick-started. They would only work with the low-density commercial. So we put it in here, and then eventually we moved it down here in the form of high-density commercial, rezoned it to office here, and then started spreading the office this way, where it will eventually kind of butt up against the high-density commercial, and that will be the repeating theme. And we're actually almost out of space from the assets that we used to stamp these guys into place. It won't be long before we have to start adding around the other side of the circle, and then maybe up that way once we move all these guys out of the way. So, I mean, we're growing, we're on the grow, we're making money, we're doing okay in that kind of regard. But if we speed things up just a little bit here, nighttime will come, and we'll see the biggest obstacle that we've encountered thus far. Now, the patch came out. There was a patch that came with the day-night cycle and a couple of other little details for free. And then, of course, there's an expansion. There's a paid expansion you can get. It's like $15 or $20 something. I haven't even looked into it necessarily because we've got our hands full with what we're doing already. And the free little guy, obviously, with the day-night cycle, having things shift over into nighttime and the lights come on and everything looks fantastic in this big glowing city is really, really cool. I really like it, and you know, it was given to us for free, so it's hard to get too uptight about anything that may or may not be working. But you can see now things are starting to get a little bit darker, the shadows are starting to get a little bit longer, and if we get rid of this kind of overlay here, we can see we've definitely got kind of a dusk feel going on. All of a sudden all the lights start to come on, and it looks fantastic. It's just, I really like it. I really like the way that it looks, but then all of a sudden something goes wrong. What's happening? Our entire city is now without power, water, or sewage because the solar power plants don't generate power at night. Now, if we were to be exceptionally pedantic, and I don't mean that in an insulting way, but if we were to just go by the laws of physics in the real world and sun and solar and thermal and all these other things that come together, solar power plants don't work at night. That's just the way that it works. You can't generate solar power without the sun, and there's no sun at nighttime. That's the law of causation. There's nothing there to make it work. I don't necessarily resent the idea that the solar power plant behaves differently at night. What's a little bit disappointing is that the way that it behaves, there's no follow-through into game mechanics that you can solve the situation in a way that makes sense. Now, to give you an idea, if we really wanted to get sticky about it and say solar power plants, for example, will now produce less power during the day because they have to take some of the power they're generating and use it to charge thermal batteries or capacitors or whatever to see the city through the nighttime for power, that would have made sense. A nerf to the maximum capacity in order to allow it to produce power throughout the nighttime, I could see that. That definitely makes sense. On the flip side of the coin, the way that we have it now is kind of like it disables the power generation altogether. You can see 0 megawatts is being produced. So you would have to replace the power generation with something else, whether it's wind turbines, coal power, oil power, nuclear power, hydroelectric dam. We are not going to be building another one of those anytime soon. We learned our lesson. you have to build these things to produce enough power to get the city through the night. And if we take a look at what the city wants, the nighttime demand is 97 megawatts still at night. That's what it wants, and we're producing 17. And the 17 that we're producing is from our incinerators. The garbage incinerators produce power as one of the byproducts of what they do. That's where our power is currently coming from. The amount of power that we're consuming at night has not significantly diminished because there's less going on in this city. It's basically, for all practical intents and purposes, remained high enough that whatever you do to get your city through the night in terms of power will probably also be enough to get it through the day in terms of power, at which point, why bother with solar power to begin with? It's kind of the thing where it's been rendered obsolete by this whole night cycle thing, and there should have been, maybe, we might think, a little bit of follow-through in the thought process when we say, okay, we're going to make it so that it doesn't generate any power at night. What does this do to the gameplay experience? What does this do to the mechanics? As a player, how do you respond to that? The only response that works is either get rid of your solar power and replace it with something else that works 24 hours, or disable the day-night cycle so that you can have 24-hour power all the time, but you don't get the benefit of the super swanky city night lights going on. That to me is kind of it's like there could have been other things done. Like I say, we could have changed the mechanics of the solar power plant so it produces less power, but also produces power at night from the reserves that it generates throughout the day. There could be some sort of like adjunct maybe to the solar power plant, something that you have to build near the solar power plant that will allow it to store energy to get it through the day, or as an alternate power source, like for example a little miniature recycling garbage methane burner that produces clean power throughout the night. It doesn't produce a lot of power, but it produces enough, you know what I mean? There's all kinds of things that could have been done that would have made sense in the context of this is what we can do so that everything still works, people still have solutions, even though we've changed the mechanics to go along with what happens between day and night with solar power. Kind of a oops, I think. I feel like in the development context, this was a bit of an oops. This was a bit of an oversight that maybe couldn't have, shouldn't have, wouldn't have happened in different circumstances. I'm not going to get too hung up on it. I've been able to get by just fine by disabling the day-night cycles for now, and I'm not so hung up on having them that I'm angry that I can't use them in order to get my city to grow and work throughout the night on solar power. But I'm looking forward to seeing what solutions come down the pipeline, because I honestly don't expect that this is the kind of thing that will be left as it is for very long. I think it really could use a little bit of refining in the design stages and then get it into the game in a way that makes sense. So that's what I've been working on, is just doing a bit of zoning, doing a little bit of balancing, getting people happy. I've got the university back in place in the city so that we can continue educating people as high as we need to. The high-density commercial, really, more than the office space, I think wants the highly educated people, so we're focusing our attention on getting our people educated as quickly as possible. Now that we know we can just disable the night cycles, we're going to continue building with solar power, but we're not going to expand. We're not going to buy any more solar power plants. When we're maxed out on what this guy can do, we can bring this guy online, and then if we max out on that, then we'll take a look at what our alternatives are before we start thinking about building any more solar power plants, if the solution hasn't been put forward that gets us through the night cycles with solar power. So the next episode is probably going to be more assets stamped into place and merged, so that the city is going to be probably twice the size that it is now. We'll have highway connections. We've got transit starting to go in, buses and metros, trains, all kinds of crazy stuff that's going to be going on. Realistically speaking, it's growing pretty quickly because we've got so many things in place, we've got so many things unlocked, and we've got so many services we can just drag into the city when we're ready for them. It shouldn't be too long before we're back up and running with a city that's large enough to be making us pull our hair out with how nothing works anymore. So if you want to be notified when I add those episodes, as always, you can subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information box below the video. Please leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.